All right, this is the Blairing Out with Eric Blair show, and today I'm pleased to have Fletcher and Wyatt Shears of the Garden on the show. How you guys doing today?
Pretty superb, thanks.
Good, happy to be here.
What was the best part of growing up in Orange County for you guys?
There was some great things about it and some sort of mundane things about it, but for the most part, when we look back now as we're a bit older, I think we can appreciate it more than maybe even we did when we were growing up here. There were some cool aspects to it. Him and I have said previously before, it's kind of one of those things where it doesn't have a lot going on, but you can make some fun experiences for yourself if you get creative, essentially. There's also some things that used to be around in the city or in the county that were kind of fun, kind of vital to us when we were growing up that aren't here anymore. Just as anything, it just things change, but there's a lot of really cool history that came out of Orange County musically. We like to kind of pay attention to that.
I always like the idea of Orange County standing on its own next to LA, you know, not just being always in the shadow, especially coming back to it at an older age always and looking at it from a different perspective. It's kind of encouraging, and I always want to help to make it a more active place, like as far as like the arts go and music and whatnot.
How were you guys affected by going to punk shows with your father, Shattered Faith drummer Steve Shears, when you're in like 3rd or 4th grade?
He would play pretty random shows, LA or the Inland Empire, Orange County. And a lot of the time it was just a backyard show, or maybe it was an AA show. We were usually the youngest there, and a lot of older people who were just old school punks, but just older now, you know? And so that was kind of the vibe. I mean, I think our first show we ever went to was in Riverside, and it was a backyard show with an empty pool. It was DI, Shattered Faith, and
Unit F.
yeah, some other band. And that was, I think, in 2004. So I think that was the first time we ever really went to a show that was like that.
I got to kind of experience like the vibe of it all, but I think from that point on we were pretty interested in any and all things to do with that. So up until then, essentially, we were just always trying to get to a show or go see something. And we've had the privilege of seeing a lot of really good new school stuff over the years and a lot of really good old school stuff too. And there's some bands I'm glad I got to see play locally before they died, you know, or whatnot. You know, there's a few here and there. So just being in this area, and LA as well, for sure. I feel like you kind of privileged in that way. You get to see a lot of cool shit that a lot of other people don't get to see in other places, you know? And you get to see it on almost a more casual level, you know?
Yeah. I feel like we've seen a lot of bands that were more closer to our age come and go, and a lot of old school bands from the early days come and go, and even got to make friends with some of them just by chance. So just on our own accord, really. Just even when Mike Atta passed away, we were going to his shop every week, just hanging out with him, probably bugging the shit out of him, but just asking him questions. And then, you know, eventually one of our old bands played with Middle Class on one of their last shows ever before Mike Atta passed. Stuff like that, you know.
Just getting to be around and get mixed up in it all was super easy growing up, you know. And
Kim from Flashbacks, in there with Kim every week, almost freaking after school, just go in there.
Yeah, I got to see Sin 34 before they stopped because of the passing. Just like different things like that. Being a lot younger than obviously a lot of these old school bands, being pretty much a generation away. I'm just stoked that we got a chance to see some of them, even if it was after their prime, technically.
That's definitely a perk of living here.
The punk scene here is epic. When you think about the Adolescents, DI, and Social Distortion, all of these prime movers came right out of Orange County.
Wyatt and I grew up with a lot of that stuff, as far as just like listening to really random old records from OC that just inspired us a lot, honestly.
We ditched high school. I remember my friend pulling out like the Agent Orange record. He's like, you gotta hear this song Bloodstained. It's just like, whoa, what is this? It's like, that's me.
Yeah, I think the first time I ever really felt that was when I heard the EP Paranoid Time from Minutemen, and just hearing the simplicity of those songs and how jagged and janky they were just really made me feel like, damn, this is really, really interesting. You know, as a kid, just being like, damn, this is hitting the spot in like a lot of ways.
I mean, I remember being a kid and thinking, oh man, the punk movement, man, it happened 20 years ago, and now it's like happened 40 years ago, and it's like, oh my god, like it's just getting farther and farther away. But I like to keep it close to my heart because it's we were literally raised on it, so it's even though we weren't there when it was happening, it's definitely like a part of who we are.
What were the most important lessons learned from your father, Steve Shears, about how to handle yourself in the music business?
I think there's like a misconception that happens often with our dad. He was in bands, but I think a lot of people think, oh, he was in the music business, he got us connections and blah blah blah. In no way am I putting down my dad, because we got a lot of inspiration from him just musically, and when he was a punk in the old days, and that stuff was inspiring to us. But as far as like the music stuff goes, he was always kind of more of like a local guy. Like he would play house shows, bar shows. He wasn't really playing like club shows or anything of that nature all that much. And he joined Shattered Faith in 2000, and he did play for Final Conflict for a while as well, but he played for them in like a lull period.
Yeah,
so
he didn't really experience any of like the business aspect of anything. All of that we had to 100% navigate ourselves. And for him, it was interesting for him to watch because it was on a different side of things, you know, that he might have experienced. But his was more like, you know, you grind and you do your thing locally, and then that's it.
He did his thing very locally, and it was really cool for us to have him be a part of bands that we like nowadays. But it was actually kind of more the opposite. We've been able to kind of teach him about how the music industry works a lot over the years. We've brought him on tour with us in Europe and got to show him a lot of cool stuff.
Wow, that's cool.
And it's rad because he's super supportive, and he's stoked because we all have this similar interest of music. We've been fortunate to like push it to a level that none of us have really ever seen before. So it's awesome to have that like relationship.
Highlights of your time with your 5th grade band Alert and your high school band Miss Hannah's Victims.
Alert was kind of just a little fun thing when we were like in 5th grade. We made some stickers and played like a house show or two.
That was us kind of trying to figure out how to start a band. So you just grab your classmate and tell him grab a guitar, pretty much, you know.
The guy who doesn't even like what you like, but he happens to play guitar, and you're like,
yeah. So you're like,
let's go.
Just play what we want you to play. Let's figure it out. And you know, I think we played a show in my garage in like maybe 2005 when we were in like 5th grade or something like that.
Nobody came obviously because there's nothing there, but it was fun.
Miss Hannah, MHV, that was actually our first band that kind of started getting the ball rolling for us. We released a record in Japan, and we released some tapes with Burger in the past, and played quite a bit locally. Never got too far outside of the city except for LA, Orange County, back and forth. For that time and for the high school years, we felt like it was a lot, which it wasn't.
I would be in high school on my video production computer in the back of the class, emailing this record label in Japan, trying to see if they'll put something out. I'd never been to Japan. I didn't know anything about it, and they were down. You shoot your shot, and maybe it happens, maybe it doesn't. But for us, that was like how we would try to make things happen.
Yeah, at that time, you were doing a lot of the DIY aspects of it, as far as like calling up D. Piazza's Mark, and then just being like, hey, can we get this date on this? And then you assemble a lineup, and then we would overplay there in high school all the time.
But it didn't matter because there was no long-term goal or anything. We just
play and play again, and just keep refining your set there and hoping that one more person than the night before walks through the door or whatever.
Yeah, it was more for us is just get on there and play. We were never ever trying to do anything where we're like, yeah, we're gonna be this band, we're gonna be big. It was just like, make it something that we like. That was like literally it, and that's pretty much still how it is today.
Long Beach used to be like our LA, basically. So we would OC to Long Beach. Long Beach felt far at that time, and in those early days of playing, where you're like, oh, D. Piazza's just like, that's the happening spot. Eventually, towards later high school, we started going to play LA at smaller, either a DIY spot or like a very small club.
Almost every day after school on the weekends, I would call Mark D. Piazza up on the phone, just badger the shit out of him until he put us on a show or two, and then try to carve out a night of my own so I could put on my own show. Sometimes the bands wouldn't show up. It was a mess.
You'd be making CDs, and then you would get the CD covers from like Staples, and then you'd put them through the printer so they would print your logo on the back, and then put the CD in there, and then you'd give them out at school, or you give them out at shows, whatever demo tape you could get. We couldn't access shirts at that time.
Flyers in school, they get ripped down, you know, stuff like that. You do what you can, but as long as it's fun, like, who cares, you know?
The Blairing Out Show.